Hello, and welcome to the Book Refuge, and welcome to one of my favorite videos to make, which I say pretty much every time. I have some recommendations for you. So I put it up on Twitter and asked what kind of book recommendations people would be interested in, if there was a certain genre or theme or anything people wanted, and nobody really had a specific one for me, which happens when you have a small Twitter following. Sometimes you get lots of people answering you, and sometimes you get nothing. But I did have a couple specific ones I wanted to recommend. And then I thought, why don't I recommend some that I either read before Booktube or read on Booktube but didn't get to talk about them a lot, and just some random ones that I feel like don't get talked about enough or they were a long time ago. So basically, this video is just going to be random recommendations, which I'm sure you saw by the title. So I have some from fantasy, sci-fi fantasy, I have some pirate adventures, I have, some high fantasy, low fantasy, I have I have a couple young adult, they're adult, I have a thriller in here, I have a horror book in here, I have just a ton of stuff. So this really is a random recommendations video. I'm going to talk a little bit, like, no spoilers, but like enough so you get an idea of this book. So this might be kind of long. But yeah, let me know, if you've read any of these, what you thought. Some of them go back pretty far. Like, this is going to be fun for me. Yeah, I'm really excited. So let's go ahead and dive in. And I want to start with the one that like inspired me to do this today, because I don't feel like I have enough that I could film a review for this book because it gave me so many feelings, but I still want to recommend it. And I've only read the first book. This is a trilogy. I am jumping on the second book very soon. Like, it's happening. It's happening. But yeah, I'm excited. So let's go. My first recommendation, this is a high fantasy, kind of. Like, it's weird. I'm not super great with like labeling things. But this book, it's gotten so many awards. It's so cool. It's The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. As you will have seen in my reading vlog, if you watch those, this book just hit me. It freaking punched me, guys. I don't even know how, like, to sum it up or explain it, because I was flabbergasted. This book has many, like, mixed opinions because it has a second person point of view part to the book. So there's 3 points of view. There's 3 different people, Damaya, Cyanite, and Isun, and the Isun point of view is told in second person point of view. So if you remember the hype for the book You, which was about that, stalker person, in this case, you are living in the head of Isun as she starts the book with a tragedy happening, and how's she going to pull her life back together and go on this journey to save her daughter. And when you're in her point of view, you are her. And I loved it. It reminded me of a choose your own adventure, except, the adventure was like already written, and I loved it. And then the other 2 points of view are these 2 other women, and I really, really enjoyed it. And the places that this book went was crazy. But I understand why it would throw people off, that second person point of view is really polarizing. But I think if you go into it and you try to just like, okay, I am this person. And it was easier to do because she wasn't a serial killer like in You, where I was in his head and I felt sympathy for him and I hated it. I was in her head and I wanted to be there because she was this flawed, imperfect woman, and I could relate to her even though I'm not the age that she is or have children. Like, I had the same goals as her and I wanted to see her succeed and me succeed. Like, whenever I explain this book to people, I'm like, I was doing it and I just loved it. So this is great. You can find better reviews for this book than me. I think Murphy Napier will have one out if she doesn't already, because we read this together and she articulates things so much better than me. But there were things in here. This is hard. There is trigger warnings for abuse to children, for there's some allusions to assault. There's also I can't say one of them because I don't want to be the person, but look up a list of trigger warnings for this, okay? Just do it, but I don't want to be the one to spoil it. But the biggest one for me was violence against children. But this book was so good. So that was the main purpose I wanted to make a recommendations video, is I want to share this book with you. Hopefully I'll have better thoughts in my August wrap up, because right now I can't say the thoughts. Next, I want to suggest Brightly Burning by Alexa Dunn. I read this last year and I really enjoyed it. This is a retelling of Jane Eyre in space. However, there are a lot of things changed up. There are some cool twists to the story that I really enjoyed. Like, it wasn't done the same, and the parts that were the same were really, really fun, and I had a great time. I just really love this book. I love Alexa Dunn. She is on AuthorTube, and she just really like gets you inside the business of, mostly from the traditional publishing point of view, because that's how she did her book. But her next book is like a retelling of Romeo and Juliet, and I really want to read that one too. But I had a great time. I annotated this one, and I loved it. I loved it. That was polarizing for people too, but all right, let's do a throwback one. I read this, and I haven't reread this one yet, which I should before recommending it, but I also think that I just need to recommend it with the love that I had for it as a kid, and just, you know, let you take what you will out of it. Maybe suggest it to young friends that you know, or your daughters, because I loved this. And that is Megan Mead's Guide to the McGowan Boys by Kate Bryan. I loved Kate Bryan when I was a teenager, because she wrote like Gossip Girl-esque, but not quite as like wild people as them. But this is about Megan, and her parents are military parents, and they're going on deployment together. I believe that's what it was. Yeah, her parents are in South Korea, and she didn't want to go. So she's staying with a friend of the family, and they have 7 boys, ranging from the ages of like 20 down to 7 years old. And she is living with them, and she likes a couple of them, and it's very interesting. And I really liked it because it didn't cross over into that line of like, you know, liking a foster sister or like a step brother, which is a whole different way you can go, which is just weird. There's no relation to these boys. She doesn't really know them that well. She hasn't seen them in a few years because they've been living somewhere else. And it's just funny. This book is funny, and it's fun, and it's so cute, and it's really short, and like, yeah, I really should reread it. It's hard for me to read teen books anymore. Like, high school books, that's what I mean. Like, I like YA, but I like YA fantasy, and it's very rare that I read contemporary these days. But this is one that I'll always keep. I love it so much. My friend and I, we read all the Kate Bryan books, and they were so much fun. So I really suggest this for you or a young reader in your life. It is hilarious. There's so much comedy, and it's really cute. Next, let's talk about a fantasy trilogy that I enjoyed. This series was not one of my most favorites ever, but I feel like it's a good introduction into some YA fantasy with like a high fantasy situation, and I really loved it. That is the Frostblood trilogy by Ellie Blake. So pretty. So there's this one, Frostblood, Fireblood, and Nightblood. And so this trilogy is, so there are these people who, so the Frostbloods rule the land, and Ruby is a Fireblood, and most of the Firebloods have been hunted to extinction, basically. And she's living in hiding with her mom or her aunt, and she gets found out, and so she has to go on the run, and she ends up at this monastery with these monks who want to train her to assassinate the king. Like, that's basically what they want to do. And there's this man named Arcus there who is a Frostblood who is helping her. Like, he's using his Frostblood powers to help her get stronger at her Fireblood powers. And it's really cool. Like, I really loved it. Like I said, this isn't gonna win any awards. It's not the greatest that I've ever read, but this is a solid 4-star series. If you haven't picked it up, I really suggest it. I can't like say more, but this was a series. I started it when this one came out, and it took forever for these ones to come out, but I love this trilogy. I really love Ellie Blake. I want to read more from her. And I really loved the romance in this one. You know, I'm a sucker for romance. This one, definitely, there's a heavy romance through it. And I love it. I love it so much. But yeah, there's some twists and turns, and this series was really fun. So I definitely suggest this one. Obviously, that's this whole video. You know how it is. It's awkward to try to explain why you love stuff. Let's go to old one. Here is a horror novel. Okay, guys, I do not read horror. And the only horror books I've read, it's usually a mixture of horror and something else. And I'll tell you, when I started this book, I did not know that it was a horror novel. I thought it was a thriller, or I thought it was like whatever. And like this author, most of her other books were like romance. So I wasn't prepared for this. But this book is called Red Hill by Jamie McGuire. This book is about the zombie apocalypse. And I did not know that when I read it. It is the first vampire book I can't talk, guys, I'm sorry. This is the first zombie book I ever read. Before I watched Walking Dead and loved it. I used to love Walking Dead. And there's some other ones I've read since then that have zombie elements in it. But this one is amazing. It's in the point of view of a few different people. There's Scarlett, Miranda, Zoe, and Nathan. And we see them all in their like different points of view. And then they kind of end up in the same place together. And they're fighting for survival. And this is a book with an open ending. There's no sequel to this, as a lot of, I feel like, apocalypse books have to be. But it was a really quick read. For me, this didn't overly scare me. It was just enough that it like gets your heart racing a little. So if you don't like horror a lot and you want it to be there to be more elements to it than that, I suggest this as a starting point, maybe. I haven't really liked any other horror I've tried. Like, there's a couple like sci-fi or fantasy books I've read that have elements of horror in it. Like the Sword of Truth series has some horror elements in it. Contagion by Aaron Bowman has horror elements in it. And this one does, and I really liked it. So here's your one and only like horror recommendation you'll ever get from me, but maybe it could be fun for this Halloween. I'm thinking about listening to this one on audio this October. I think that could be really fun. So yeah, I suggest Red Hill. I've kept this book for like 6 years because I just had such strong feelings about reading it when I did, and I loved it. My sister liked that one too, I think. All right, let's go to one. This is a more recent one, and I have talked about this series, this duology before. I made a video where I recommended all my duologies. Actually, in this video, I'll actually link the playlist for all of my recommendations in case that's what landed you on my channel. You can just check that out. I have tons of, different videos with recommendations. So that is The Daughter of the Pirate King duology by Trisha Levenseller. I love this series. This is about, you say her name, Alosa, and she is half siren, and her father is the Pirate King, obviously, and her mother is a siren queen, and her father is a pretty cruel man, and he uses her because sirens have the ability to, lead men astray and like use mind control on them. And her father uses her to do that to people. And he sends her undercover into one of his rivals' crews, his pirate crew, to get some information from them. And there she has an interesting go of it, falls in love, makes some interesting decisions. And this was just a wild ride. I read both of these books within like a week probably. I really enjoyed them. It's a quick, fun duology. You're not getting yourself in too deep with anything. It's a quick read, and I love it. I want to read more from Trisha Levenseller. I really need to read The Warrior Way or whatever it's called, but I haven't got to it yet. My list is long. All right, let's talk about another pirate one that I like real quick. So this is another one that's for young adult, and I'm trying to get, and even like almost middle grade. like almost, but the content's kind of dark. There's a trigger warning for like assault on children in this as well, but the way it's told, you never feel too crazy with that, is what I would say. So for me, I loved the Bloody Jack series by L.A. Meyer, and I love this series. I think there's like 12 books in the series. I've read all of them except the last one because I want to reread the series before I read it, because I love Jackie. She's so feisty. She's amazing. Couple things about this book that I think would make it hard to reread. So Jackie's telling all of this in like first person present tense, and so that's a hard tense for me to read. And she also it's written in her voice very strongly. Like, she starts out life as a street urchin and her gang gets killed, and so she disguises herself as a boy and joins a ship, and she's a ship's boy for the ship at the age of 11, I think. And so it's told how she talks, and this is the same thing that I had a problem with the Scarlet trilogy. Is I don't like the errors in type in the text, and so I don't know how rereading this would go. So like, she says me-self instead of myself, and like just improper sentence structure. And while that's I think that's really cool when you're a kid, which is why I think it would be hard to reread this series, but I loved it. So maybe if I listened to it, it would be better. I don't know. But I still suggest this series. It is so much fun. Jackie's adventures are crazy. Like, during the whole series, like, she's kidnapped by pirates. She runs her own pirate ship. She gets stranded on an island. She goes to the East and is someone's servant for a while. She is a spy. Like, all these different things. And like, those aren't even spoilers, they're the titles of the books. But just to give you a scope, like, this whole series takes place over probably like 10 years. And there's her and her true love, James. And I love the series. And I really want to finish it. I really want to finish this series. But it's a good one. We're getting close to the end here. Let's do another trilogy. That is the Defy trilogy by Sarah B. Larson. So you'll notice this is in my unhaul video, and it's just because I don't think I'll read this series again, but I'll just hold up one. But I really loved it. Both me and my sister really loved this trilogy. It was a really quick read. Like, seriously, it's really fast. It was really fun. It's just not a series I need to read again, but I really suggest it. It was really fun. So this is about Alexa Holland, and she's a fighter, and she is in the guard that protects the Prince Damien, and she is disguised as a boy because when her parents die, she has her twin brother, and girls have to go to breeding houses basically, and her brother was going to be drafted in to the army. So they disguised her as a girl, and since she looks like her brother, they assumed she was a boy, and she joins the army with her brother instead of going to be raped and have children for the crown instead. So her and her brother end up as guards for Prince Damien, and Prince Damien knows that she's a woman right away. So yeah, but there's a lot of magic in this series. There is a very strong main character who makes tough choices. This series really was intense. I really enjoyed it. So it's Defy, Ignite, and Endure. And I really loved it. I have loved all of Sarah Larson's books. She's writing an adult book right now, and I'm excited for that. They're just books that you read them and I appreciate them, but I don't need to reread it. You know, it's not in that top echelon of books that I'll go back to over and over again. But that does not make it any less worthy. I just have 800 books in my house, and it's time to pass them on to someone else who can love them the way that I did. So I'd also think that book is more like younger YA. All right, so we're getting down to the last two. So now I'll share a thriller mystery series with you. This is a pretty dark mystery series, and I'm suggesting Okay, so this trilogy by Alison Brennan, which I used to love Alison Brennan. Back when I would read mystery novels and like murder mysteries, I read so many of her books, but I've fallen behind and I just haven't tried to catch back up. And all of her series are connected. And the series is See No Evil, Fear No Evil, Speak No Evil. And so this one specifically is about this girl named Lucy Kinsey gets kidnapped, and her older brother is he's a psychologist, and so her whole family is in the military or police or those type of things. And we've met them. If you read all of Alison's books, you will have like met them before. And their youngest sister Lucy is just graduating college, and she gets kidnapped by this internet terrorist who, you've seen this trope probably more by now, but this was fresh when I was a teen anyway. And she gets put on this illegal site where the people get a vote on what happens to her. So that's rape, torture, punishments, and then finally how she will die. And the man who is running the show is a personal enemy of this woman named Kate Donovan, who her partner was murdered by him before, and she's been rogue since then. So she gets in contact with the Kinseys, who are trying to save their young sister, and they work together. And this book was really hard to read, but it was one of the first really dark. It reminded me a lot of Criminal Minds. And I love Alison Brennan's writing. Just now I read for escapism. And so this kind of novel, even though I've kept this trilogy since I was like 16, I could read those things and bounce back easier. And now I need my fantasy to be fun. I need it to be escapism. I need it to be things that can't happen in real life. So you'll know that's why I don't like a lot of contemporary. That's why I don't read murder mysteries often, unless there's like a certain theme about it, like it's Victorian or future or something, because this stuff is real. But if you like thrillers, if you like murder mysteries, I highly, highly suggest Alison Brennan. She was really the first one I got into. Her and Catherine Coulter's Thrill FBI series as well are my favorite of those. So, and then finally, this was a long recommendation video. It was very fun though. I like it. I have one where I love the first two books in this series, and I haven't read the third one because I don't want it to be over, but I adored this book, and that is The Queen of the Tearling by Erica Johansson. This is about a girl named Kelsey, who she is the bastard daughter of the queen, and the queen finally dies. This is a very corrupt kingdom. They've been paying tithes to this other kingdom and sending them slaves so that they would be left alone. And so there's a high moral cost to this freedom that they have. So when her mother died, her corrupt uncle took over and now is trying to have her killed. So she's been living in hiding with this couple who were close servants of the queen, and then she sent her to hide away. And also, her mother wasn't a very nice woman. She wasn't good at her job. So there's a very weird setting to this. Like, it isn't like it's this big noble woman that she's trying to replace, or this like even a kingdom that maybe should even be saved. But Kelsey has been taught all her life that she would be this queen. Is it Kelsey? Am I saying it right? Yeah. And so a group of soldiers, the queen's closest allies, get sent to bring her back to be the queen. And it's a rough road. And this woman, she could give it up. She could run. She's only 19, I think. She wants to just keep being a country girl, but she believes that she can save this kingdom. And if she finds the right people, that she can make a difference. And I loved it. This series is also very interesting. Like, I'm not going to spoil it. But it is one of those books where, nope, I can't say that. Never mind. I was going to tell you the kind of trope, but it's a big spoiler, so I'll keep it to myself. But I really, really liked the first one. I really enjoyed the second one, and I just haven't read the third one because I got a couple spoilers for that one. and I'm not a huge fan of what I've heard, but I still believe that the first one is worth it. So there you go. There is a group of recommendations from me. I hope you try some of them. Tell me if you've read them, what your thoughts are. I make new videos every Monday and Thursday, and sometimes other days. Please like and subscribe if you enjoy this content. It really helps me out. And if you'd like to see some more from me, you can do that right now. Have a great day, everyone.